Circle Time Magazine is a professional development talk show for educators. This is a special season of Circle Time talking all about supporting school-age children.
This show gives real-world examples of teaching and learning in a variety of early childhood education and school-age childcare settings, as well as ideas for using appropriate and accessible materials. Every episode has tips and methods for you to try out too.
Hi, and welcome to Circle Time Magazine. I'm one of your hosts, Sophie Biddle. Circle Time Magazine is a professional development talk show for educators. This season is a special season of Circle Time Magazine. We are talking all about supporting school-age children.
Thanks, Sophie. I'm Sheely Mock. This is a time for us to gather and have time for us to learn and grow together.
This season, we're looking at high-quality practices with an expanded age range. ELO programs include many places where children go before school, after school, or during the summer. Many providers serve both early childhood and school-age children. Right now, during the COVID-19 pandemic, many ELO and early childhood providers have expanded their services. Some providers are serving school-age kids for the first time, or are serving school-age kids all day and supporting remote learning. This season, we'll review practices to help support both new and experienced ELO providers.
Today, we're talking about social-emotional learning, or SEL skills. The Collaborative for Academic Social-Emotional Learning, also known as CASEL, defines social-emotional learning as the process through which all young people and adults acquire and apply the knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop healthy identities, manage emotions, achieve personal and collective goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain supportive relationships, and make responsible and caring decisions.
Our learning objectives today are to understand the importance of adults co-developing social-emotional learning, also called SEL, skills alongside children, identify specific activities, strategies, and skills that educators can use to build SEL skills in themselves and in children, understand the connection between SEL development in early childhood through the school-age years, and make connections between anti-bias teaching practices and high-quality SEL facilitation.
A key tenet of high-quality ELO programs is to center youth voice and empower youth leadership. We'll go into more depth on this later in the season. You may remember Sadalise from her role as kid correspondent in earlier seasons of Circle Time. For this season, we're delighted to have Sadalise return along with her sister Gabby as junior hosts. Let's welcome them to this space and kick off our Youth Voice segment.
Hello everybody, my name is Sadalise. And I'm Gabby. And welcome to our Youth Voice segment. Today, our topic is social-emotional learning, and we have two guests with us today. Would you like to tell us your names and your grade?
Hi, I'm Wesley, and I'm in 7th grade.
Hi, I'm Olivia, and I'm in 4th grade.
Thank you guys so much for coming. So Gabby just has a few questions for you guys, and yeah, go ahead.
Why do you think it is important to talk about your feelings?
Olivia?
Well, I think it's important to talk about your feelings because if you keep them all bottled up, after a little bit, your feelings just keep on getting bigger and bigger and bigger until that bottle can't hold it anymore, and then it just explodes. And nobody can help you at that point because you're having a freak out or an emotional breakdown.
And to piggyback off of what Olivia said, you'll start thinking about things more. You'll start like self-doubting yourself, and these emotions just slowly start to try to drive you insane. If you talk to someone about it, you might find out, oh wait, this started here and I made up with this person, so I don't need to hold on to these emotions anymore. I can just let them go. But if you're just trying to deal with it by yourself, you might not be able to do it.
I think you guys pretty much summed up what I was going to say, but like it is really hard to have all of your feelings bottled up. And letting them explode all over people, like Olivia said, you're pretty much nobody can help you anymore because you're just like shooting all of your feelings out at everybody, and you're going to probably end up doing something you regret, which is why I think it's super important to talk about.
I think it's important to talk about your feelings because then if you always keep them bottled up, you go outside or you want to become friends with someone, you see someone sad and you want to help them, when you go talk to them, you're going to spill all your feelings out and you're not going to actually help them with what they need help with. The next question is, what do you do when you have challenging feelings?
I have a bad habit of just trying to hide in my room and sulk. I get embarrassed easily, and for me, it's hard to talk to teachers because they always act so seriously, and so do most adults. But what I've recently started doing is I've deemed one of my friends the person that I can talk to. So if I ever need someone to help me with those emotions, she's the first person I go to.
What I do is that I go to an adult, like my parents or my mom or dad, or even my grandparents, or sometimes I talk to my dog and say how I'm feeling. And if I'm not talking to my dog, they respond back to me and tell me how I can solve my problem and get over my challenging feelings so I'm not left in the dust confused.
Well, first, I don't do something to be productive, kind of like what Wesley does. I'll just go into my room and I'll sulk. And it's like if you're in there for a long time, and it's like you don't want to do anything else. But then once you calm down, you start to want to do something productive again, and your mind starts to like rework itself. And usually I do that by expressing myself, by like drawing, reading, even taking a nap.
Okay. So what I'm trying to do is, you know what? I cry a lot. You know what I always say to myself? I always say, you're crying on the outside, but it doesn't always mean you're crying on the inside. And then my sister would usually come in and she would come hug me and calm me down. It'd be really nice. Sounds like you have a pretty good sister. Can you give an example of one way you calm down? I take deep breaths, or do something that I love, or talk to my dog. Because I love her so much.
Right, what I do, it normally depends on the emotion. If it's sadness, I'll probably just talk to the friend I was talking about earlier, and she'll help me calm down. If it's anger, I'll try to hit a pillow or something that's not a person. Or I'll go into a game I play, for example, Minecraft, build things or spawn things that represent negative emotions, and then just take TNT and blow it all up because it's satisfying.
My mind, like I need to calm it down more. And so if I can calm down my mind, I can calm down my body and I can calm down my emotions. And so I just do that by meditating. And if I had a dog, I would talk to my dog. But I would take a nap. Naps are nice.
Another thing I would do to make me calm down is I would dance, which people don't call dancing because you just do this.
It is super fun. Next question.
How do adults help you process and understand your feelings? Well, how adults help me process my feelings is that they talk to me and ask me questions and make me feel a whole lot better. And I talk to them back and say that I'm feeling this and I'm feeling this and I need help to process all of this. And as the metaphor that I didn't understand before that my dad told me is that how do you eat a whale? One bite at a time. So take one step at a time just to process confusing feelings and emotions.
How adults help me is, I said before, I'm very embarrassed talking to adults, but that once a time when I actually do, there are a lot of help because they can they've normally been through things that I've been through, and so they can talk from their experience and what they did to solve the problem.
I feel like teachers could help by doing it individually instead of like as a whole class, especially now with online school, because they're trying to get everybody to talk about their feelings and just barf all their feelings out and talk to me because they're like, I can help. Talk to me, please, all of you at the same time. So, because nobody's going to get embarrassed by talking about all of your feelings in front of people you don't know. But I think it's nicer if you take kids like separately and you just talk to them separately, and then as a group, you'll slowly be able to get that connection with everybody. And I think it will be a lot easier.
What advice do you have for teachers that like to talk about emotions?
The advice that I would give is that if you see a student struggling in like their grades or social skills, just talk to them. Like, I noticed that you were struggling in class today. What's up? Can I help with anything? Is there anything going on at home? Like that stuff. Because if you don't ask, you might not be able to get enough answers to help.
I know a lot of people that are like me and they are embarrassed to talk to teachers. And so they won't just go up to a teacher and ask to talk about their feelings or just go to the counselor's office and try to talk about their feelings. I've had multiple times where I should go to the counselor's office, but I've never been there. So I'd recommend like if you see a student that looks like maybe they're feeling mad about something or they're feeling sad, then approach them because they might be too scared to approach you. In martial arts, what my old master did, he had over the whole wall, he had inspirational quotes everywhere. So everywhere you looked, you'd read one of those quotes and it would make you feel better because it's almost impossible to avoid them.
It's about not pressuring kids to talk about their feelings because then it's going to like kind of break down everything that you probably built because it's like, oh, this person just they want to help, but they're pressuring you to do it. And I think that if teachers can just learn to kind of slow down with that and be a little bit calmer and more maybe discreet with it, then it would be better. But don't try to like act like a kid or like try to use slang or something like that. It's a bad idea waiting to happen.
And also, if like a kid has self-doubt and you noticed it, maybe you could say this quote from a movie that I love so much. You are strong, you are smart, you are important. And every time I hear that quote, I feel ready to do anything.
Well, that's all the questions we have for you guys today. So thank you so much for joining us and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Adios.
SEL skills help us navigate challenges and nurture relationships. This is especially important during the COVID pandemic, which is a time of extreme stress and trauma for everyone, on top of existing systematic traumas like racism and then any individual's life experiences.
Today, we'll be focusing on SEL skills of self-awareness, social awareness, and relationship skills. We'll talk about why it is important for children and adults to be aware of themselves and aware of others. We'll be exploring all of this in context of anti-racist and culturally responsive teaching.
So self-awareness is our first SEL skill that we are talking about today. Self-awareness is the practice of cultivating an accurate perception of self and your ability to identify and name your emotions and their influence on your behavior. Self-awareness helps us better understand how our culture, backgrounds, environment impacts our emotions, thoughts, relationships, and behaviors.
Yeah, a strong sense of self-awareness provides us with an accurate picture of ourselves and helps us to identify our needs, helps us to grow, adapt, and make positive choices for ourselves and others.
So then social awareness is basically self-awareness, but applied to groups. So social awareness is cultivating an awareness of how other people perceive and feel about the world. Social awareness is a continuum of skills, starting first with awareness, then respect and appreciation, and then lastly, empathy, especially for those who come from backgrounds and cultures different from our own.
Yes, social awareness alongside self-awareness is the foundation for healthy relationships. And so we can think of relationship skills, also sometimes called friendship skills, consists of relationship building, communication, conflict resolution, and teamwork.
Strong relationship skills help us develop safe, healthy, and positive relationships with peers and adults. Strong relationship skills are critical for both physical and mental health.
All right. Let's hear from Venelin Aguilar and Sergio Beltran with the Tacoma Whole Child Partnership. Ven and Sergio have been supporting ELO virtual programs this whole year. Part of the design of their programs is to foster collaboration between schools and ELO programs to support SEL development.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I was wondering if you two could just give us a brief recap of who you are and what your role and sort of job entails at the Tacoma Whole Child Partnership.
Yeah, so my name is Sergio Beltran. I'm an Expanded Learning Opportunity Site Director through Peace Community Center in partnership with the Greater Tacoma Community Foundation and Tacoma Public Schools.
Hi, my name is Venelin, and I'm also an Expanded Learning Opportunities Site Director. I am with Boys and Girls Club of South Puget Sound, also partnered with Greater Tacoma Community Foundation and the Tacoma Public Schools.
Well, so this episode is all about social emotional learning, and I am wondering if you can tell us about the importance of facilitating social emotional learning activities in ELO programs and after school spaces.
Yeah, I think social emotional learning is really important for our young people across the world, but particularly here in Tacoma, there's been an initiative to really push for the social emotional learning in partnership with the school district and then out-of-time providers. So we're really trying to develop those stronger social emotional learning skills, some of those CASEL competencies, things such as social responsibility, social awareness, and really helping our young people develop those skills so that they are, resources that they can have as they get older and be able to kind of pull on those banks of tools so that they can use them.
When students feel safe, and I'm thinking of not only the environment, but within themselves, and they are more willing and able to take risks within their learning, I think that's where you find a lot more of connection with the materials that they're doing and connection with others. And
Ben hits on a really good point with the connection piece, understanding how important it is for a young person to have a connection to a caring adult, whether it's in the school day or in the out of school time period. But making sure that they develop those connections and how important a solid relationship is to a student really coming out of their shell and being able to be a little more authentic, which just kind of deepens your relationship with the student and their relationship with you, but also kind of deepens the SEL practice and the kids feeling more comfortable in program and therefore becoming more engaged in your program.
Thank you both so much. And then when you talked about kids needing to feel safe within themselves too, that makes me also think about emotions. And we've heard about your emotion check-in activities. So could you tell us about them and give us an example of an emotion check-in?
So for our virtual space, currently what we have is a doc that was created for students to check in themselves. It includes questions like asking them what zone they're in, why they're in that zone, and if they would like any support getting to a different zone if they're not able to kind of help their own needs. So they fill out that form, it gets read over to us and then generated in a graph. So as a group, we can see kind of where the temperature of the room is for all of us. But then we can also identify which students are looking for support. And another thing that they identify themselves are strategies that help them first, being able to get out of that instead of us giving them different strategies to use. So for example, like a student may put like things with dancing or breathing exercises or things like that. So we start with what they have identified first. And if they haven't, then we can go into some of the strategies that we know that we've used, whether it be things that we've learned over time or things that we've picked up from some of the curriculum that we've had some experience in. But another tool that was created specifically for this virtual space was also our zone rooms. And so that's another resource students can use, and it has all colors of the zones, and it's very interactive. So they can click what zone they're in, and there are a bunch of different things in this room, like videos, activities, just little things that they can watch or interact with, or games that can help them in that zone and navigate wherever they want to be within that. So that's kind of what we've been doing in this virtual space for that.
There's really that intentional piece of, Venelin, Tiffany, or myself looking over that spreadsheet and then realizing there are students that are in the blue and red zone. So maybe they're really tired and don't necessarily want to be here, but realize the importance of being there. Or there are students who are in the red zone. They're really upset because, maybe they want to be back in school, or maybe something happened at home. And it gives us an opportunity to really invite the student out of the virtual program space into a room with some of our colleagues and just create a dialogue about why the student is feeling that way, and how we as site directors can encourage them or try to guide them into, hopefully a better space, whether that be a green zone or just more of a yellow. Maybe they're not as upset anymore, but they're a little anxious. But I do really think that's an important part of that as well.
Yeah, that comment, Sergio, made me think about what you and Ben both hit on earlier, of that the relationships are really key in developing SEL skills. And I'm wondering if there's any other tips or any examples of activities that you have facilitated either virtually or in person that you felt like went well, just to give some like more facilitation strategies to folks.
There's a mirage of things that we do, everything from, warm welcomes. So making sure that students are greeted by name as they come into program. It's not necessarily an activity, but it's obviously a really important part to fostering that safe environment where you're really deepening the practice of building relationships with young people and the other adults in the space. We do encourage our community partners who lead a lot of our programs to do opening activities. So I think Ven will probably be better suited to share some of the SEL spotlight things we've been doing.
Thank you, Sergio. This year going into the virtual space, we started something called SEL Spotlights. And what that is for every session, there is an SEL theme and competency that we focus for that week. And then there will be an activity associated with that also comes with the debrief or reflection that providers will intentionally have with their students. So they're not just doing an activity that we think will land that concept with them, but being intentional about that debrief and talking through it and making sure we have some level of understanding. So an example of that I can give to you all is one of our weeks was themed being a friend. And so we focused on the competency of relationship skills. And the activity that we did with that was have students create an advertisement on what they want in their perfect friend. So it started off with a conversation of like, what do you look for in a friend? Or think about your best friend or someone you're really close to. What are some things about them that you're drawn to? And so it's really, and again, a lot of these themes and going into them, we do focus on relationship skills, but it covers a lot of the other competencies as well. Like that can cover their own self-awareness and things that they identify as their needs and wants for someone that they want a relationship with. So yeah, they created an advertisement for that, and then they got to share out, some things that they look for in a friend. And then in the debrief, our providers spoke with our students around, so these are the qualities that you are looking for. Like, what does it mean for you to be a good friend to somebody else, and getting really deep into that conversation and kind of working with that. But one of the really cool things about these spotlights too is that we've been able to collaborate with our providers in creating these spotlights. So it's not just some random themes and activities that they do, but things that they find important themselves or activities they think will fit within this that space or that theme. So they kind of have more of a buy-in into it. And then kind of just like when they're sharing it with their students, it's something they believe in too, and something that they feel passionate about. And I think that shows up when they're doing these kinds of activities. So yeah, collaborating with them and creating these two have been really fun to see.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. It makes me think about how we think about integrating SEL skill development right into everything that we do. It just becomes part of our programming. So I appreciate you naming that. That doesn't have to be separate, right? Or this whole separate activity or unrelated, but that it's just, part of the content. And that makes me actually think then too about the importance of being anti-bias and anti-racist in teaching SEL skills, and would love to hear your thoughts on the importance of that or what that might look like.
Just realizing that, as we enter this field, there was a lot of barriers, inequitable barriers in person. And some of those things are amplified as you move into a virtual space where technology can become a barrier or access to internet can become a barrier. We put out a newsletter weekly, and we share a lot of resources in those newsletters. So there's been everything from holiday support to free internet access. We're already partnered with the Greater Tacoma Community Foundation, but we've partnered kind of dual layered with them to provide laptops for families that are having issues with their district laptops. We've partnered with some other outside organizations to do the same, like with the Tacoma Urban League, and we're looking to identify families that way. So it's really for us, or for me, myself, I'll speak for myself, it's really about identifying those gaps and those inequities and trying to fill them and kind of level the playing field for everyone.
And I think to add to that, when we think about teaching with like anti-bias or anti-racist, I think that goes hand in hand with teaching SEL. And in a way, I think of that as, we are teaching students to be able to acknowledge themselves and know others, but then also be able to recognize, some of the injustices going around. And if not teaching them and making them equipped to stand up for others, being able to actively stand up for themselves. And I think that just, I just think it all fits together.
Yeah, I think Ben hits on like another huge point of our work is like, obviously I shared about equity in terms of resource and accessibility, but also like that social awareness piece of teaching young people like is naturally embedded within social and emotional learning. Like social awareness is one of the big competencies. So, teaching young people at an early age that differences are okay and that they can actually be celebrated. Like we don't all have to be one kind of individual, that we all come from different heritages, we come from different cultures, the pigmentations of our skin are different, but that should not change the way in which we interact with one another and how we develop our relationships with one another.
Yeah, thank you both. I think that that's a really great point, that like well-facilitated SEL is inherently helping address social justice issues, that these things don't exist in a vacuum. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm curious if you have any advice or tips, considerations for providers who are maybe newer to this or are seasoned and are really trying to focus on this idea of culturally responsive programs and teaching, if you have thoughts about culturally responsive SEL facilitation.
I think one of the big things I think about in going into teaching anything, whether it's our SEL or just any other lessons, is representation. And that can look a lot of different ways. And just being able to strengthen an individual's identity or see like something that represents them, I think that helps with their engagement in the materials that you bring to the table. And I was working with a provider on some of the SEL spotlights and wanting to be a little bit more cultural inclusive. And one of the activities they actually came up with was an activity of going with everybody and having everyone share like how they say hello within their homes and what that would look like and what that sounds like. And so I think things like that and being able to engage students within like their own culture, but be able to share that and so other people can learn as well. I think that's really important.
Yeah, and I think over the last few weeks to month and a half, we've really pushed that idea forward too, is like, as a group of adults, we want to be culturally responsive in our work and in our practices, but really pushing that forward into like the next layer. So working with our providers, as Ben was sharing, to have like culturally responsive activities that support our young people, and then pushing our young people into those spaces to have those dialogues at that age, so that it's not like a culture shock as you grow older and you're like, oh, I've never learned about this. Because I do think that is one criticism of like our education system, is generally we don't learn a lot about ourselves, being that we're all from different cultures and backgrounds. But that the out of school time or SEL in general can also kind of bring out some of those culturally responsive practices or some of that culturally responsive content.
Thinking about social emotional learning and recognizing that as adults, we are supporting young people's SEL skill development, but really want to think about and would love to hear your thoughts on how we support adults in growing their own SEL skills.
The saying kind of goes, it's very hard to teach young people SEL skills as if an adult, you're not practicing them yourself. So our team has really pushed that idea into our work daily. So, all of our meetings, we're always doing zone check-ins. So we kind of have an idea of where everyone is at heading into that meeting. We do a lot of opening activities. We do optimistic closures, which is, kind of a positive spin on ending a meeting or spending some time together with a group of individuals with a question. I think by practicing them as adults, naturally you get better at it, and that benefits our young people.
Yeah, honestly, I think you just nailed it, Sergio. It's been really fun too, because previously with going back to some of the practices that we do, and this is just getting more into like specific examples, but with our SEL spotlight activities, at first we kind of modeled them in our pre-huddles, so our meetings with providers before program starts, just so that they can see how it feels within their programs. They know how to put it in, like insert that and lead that with their students. But also, it was doing an SEL activity with our adults and getting the same kind of practices with them. And I think that's created such a strong sense of community within our spaces. Even like we haven't even met some of these people in person, right? Everything has been on screen. So I think us constantly like reinforcing that every day and making sure that we're doing that within not only our meetings, but like with all of our providers and all of that space has created such a strong sense of belonging with each other, and it helps us like foster this work environment where everyone's very open to sharing and giving out ideas and kind of troubleshooting with each other. So that's been really cool to see, and kind of like the results of trying to implement some of those practices with our cohorts. So
it's just really cool to see that we have a group of adults that are really invested in social emotional learning and want to see our young people foster their skills. So like there's that extra level of commitment or dedication to being a part of something that's only going to be pushed more into the limelight as time moves forward.
I just wanted to reiterate, or what I heard, it just sounds like such an incredible learning community for your providers and for all of you. So not only to grow your own SEL skills, but really as kind of developing your practice and like having others to bounce ideas off of the importance of like supporting young people. And just seems like a really inspiring space you all have facilitated, and just so grateful that you were able to join us and share more about your experiences and share some advice for others with us today. And Sophie, any other thoughts you want to jump in with?
No, I would definitely echo that this is inspiring and uplifting. Like, I think it's nice to hear about the successes of in context of the challenges of this time, and to really hear and see the support that young people and providers are finding with the work that you all are doing is super awesome. And just like, I'm really grateful for your time and your expertise being shared here. And so many connections too to some of the things we've been talking about this whole season about safe relationships, safe environments, being able to connect with ourselves and others. So just really great. And thank you both so much.
Yeah, of course. You're welcome. Thanks for having us.
That was such a great interview. It really stood out to me how creating a safe learning environment with nurturing relationships is so critical, and such a critical foundation for the vulnerability needed in growing SEL skills. And that's regardless of whether your program is happening in person or virtually right now.
Yeah, absolutely. That really ties back to episode 1 and the emphasis on safe environments and safe relationships. It also really stood out to me that SEL skills develop best when they're culturally situated and culturally relevant. So SEL skills must be taught in context of social issues. Without context, SEL curriculum can easily become another tool of systematic oppression. SEL that isn't culturally situated and rooted in justice isn't really SEL at all.
Absolutely, Sophie. And as a facilitator or staff, it's important to check in with yourself about your intentions when sharing emotion management or processing techniques. Regulation or management techniques should be shared as a way to channel anger and grief in healthy ways versus simply controlling children's bad behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we live in a world where there is a racialized and gendered context to which children and which people are allowed to express certain emotions. I think for me and for all providers, it's always really important to just practice checking in with yourself about that and being curious about which emotions from which people can make you feel uncomfortable. And then really practice sitting with that discomfort and being comfortable with being uncomfortable, and rather than trying to get the other person to stop having those feelings.
Yes, and really just a reminder that each of us must continue to explore and grow our own relationship with SEL skills and anti-racism work. We're all on our own journey, and we need to take time to reflect on that. And so you can check out more resources in Circle Time magazine, specifically writings on SEL and racial justice by Dina Simmons and Sierra Kaler-Jones.
Let's take a look at the teaching pyramid, which is a multi-tiered system of support frequently used in early childcare settings for high-quality teaching, and the social-emotional learning pyramid of program quality, which is often used in school age and youth care settings as a framework to measure staff practice and instructional quality.
Yeah, we can see in the teaching pyramid that intentionally and regularly offering opportunities to grow social emotional skills supports children's healthy development and learning. Children thrive when they have access to social emotional learning opportunities in context of a safe environment and nurturing relationships. The social emotional learning pyramid of program quality as a whole could really be housed in the all and some parts of the teaching pyramid. The practices captured in the SEL pyramid support a high quality learning environment with structured opportunities for children to develop SEL skills.
Let's hear from Brian Manzo about the way these high quality teaching practices and SEL development are connected across the age spectrum. Brian, hi, welcome. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me. It's nice to see you all.
Can you tell us a little bit about you and what your work supporting children's social and emotional learning skills and development is like?
Yeah, sure. I'm a school counselor. And so part of that has allowed me to be a counselor for students age pre-K in the school, so around 4 all the way through seniors in high school. So that's the capacity that I work, and that's the group that I think about the most when I'm thinking about like how do we better our social emotional learning in a way that's holistic for the personal and social development for kids.
Thank you, Brian. I'm so happy to have you here today. Could you tell us about how SEL development in early and middle childhood are connected?
In the public school setting, we, first off, if we're doing our job right, we're not closing our door to anybody who comes in, which means we're meeting people in our best where they are developmentally. And that includes where they are in the cultural practices of the home. And so what that means for a school is that we have to be able to see students as whole, and part of our job is to see it as a continuity of a person's development and be able to provide language that develops along with the kid, that allows the kid to learn new expressive language and allows the school and the practitioners in the school to incorporate the expressive language from the kids. And so it's kind of we kind of learn together in that regard, depending on who the person is. But I think that the goal is to make sure that our skill sets go with the kids in developmentally appropriate ways. So that's kind of the work. And I think from a 4-year-old entering a preschool program to a 6-year-old in kindergarten, there's a big transition. There's a lot of learning that's happened, and that can be really positive, and it cannot be, depending on who the adults are who shepherd that experience.
So you've been sharing a lot about the importance of having shared language between kids and adults, and I'm wondering if you could give us a few examples of emotional literacy activities that can be scaffolded from early childhood, like that preschool age setting, through those school age kids.
Absolutely. I'd say one of the most easiest that I like is this idea of your balloon. It's a really great tool for kids and adults together to have the language as early as, for a preschool, like all the way into high school and college, is to be able to have the shared language about like how full is your balloon of energy. Like if you're coming in and the things that, I'll tell you, if you have a sibling, it stands to reason at some point before school in the morning, that sibling may have done something that filled your balloon. You can have this balloon be surprisingly full and not even realize it until it's about to pop. And I like to bring in the balloon and blow it up as a demonstration. And then I hide a thumbtack in my pocket, and then I pull it out and I pretend like, and the kids and adults are always like, oh, don't do that. Or some are like, pop the balloon. And you can take that lesson all the way up into high school, because not many people want a balloon popped in their face. And the experience of having that set as like a piece that they can carry on, you can start that in preschool, and the preschooler can say, my balloon's full. Or you could ask, wow, that person seemed really upset, like ask them how their balloon is, and they can say, oh, my balloon is too full. But that is transferable to the principal talking to a sophomore. My balloon is full right now. There's no reason that isn't shared language. Like you can do that all the way as grown-ups, and you can do it in an office workspace too, and the adults can do it on staff. You can do it at all age groups, right? Because you're just measuring energy.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate that balloon metaphor, and thinking of the converse of like what deflates your balloon, right?
Yes.
Like you mentioned lots of examples of like your balloon getting so full it's gonna pop, but like what experiences did you have, or what did your sibling or a teacher or a boss say that just like, I could see the balloon, you're holding the balloon and it just like fizzles out, it's really sad.
That's funny you say that. We actually, that part of that lesson is when you're talking about when the kids are starting to say what things let air out of the balloon, a lot of the things are, you can see the curricular significance of a lot of the programming that may not be talked about as core academic, which is again an example of cultural bias, that you would name art as not a core academic thing, right? It would be this sidebar. or you would name PE as not a core academic. That speaks to institutional bias that these are somehow less because they're not core. But the reality is that it's often these other things that allow that energy to come out of the balloon. And so they become very important, right? If we know what comes in, then we can also say what goes out.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So I want to switch gears a little bit from emotion management and just ask you what facilitation tips or tricks you have for supporting empathy and friendship skills for preschool and school age children.
Well, so I use a lot of read aloud. I like read aloud. I like storytelling because I think that we can learn through stories. I think that like that's one of the ways that communities and cultures have passed down information about like everything from how you maintain your house to how you operate in the world through storytelling. And so I think the read aloud experience is great because as long as you provide the opportunity for the kids to reflect, right, and the adults too, and the adults provide modeling, you can take these read alouds, and put yourself in. We define empathy as the ability to share in the thoughts, in the feelings of others from different backgrounds, cultures, or experiences, right? So you're asking the student to consider what it would be like. And that is actually like, you model that all the time. Like that's a big piece of modeling in pre-K and kindergarten, but it's no less a piece in middle and high school. It just sometimes falls out of favor with the language. And so I think that the read aloud of like, oh, how would you feel? How do you think this person's feeling right now? How would you feel? But I also think there's a deeper level of this. And this is an idea that I think is really important for practitioners if you have any kind of check-in time, no matter when it is. And this is this idea of focusing on the feelings. And it's about shifting from the exact content that somebody may share that brought about an emotion information experience, but instead focusing on, well, what is the emotion information experience? And let me give you an example of like, say you're in a kindergarten and it's Monday and you're like, this is not an SEL question. How was your weekend is not an SEL question, okay? So if you're doing an SEL morning meeting and your question is, how was your weekend? Not an SEL question, but nice question, socially connective question, but not an SEL question. An SEL question is like, maybe like, tell me what you experienced emotionally this weekend. And so like, name me a feeling word. How do you feel? I feel excited. I feel nervous. Whatever the kid says, you could just turn to the group. Oh, I heard such and such say they feel nervous. Has anybody else ever felt something they called nervous? Hands go up. It's like, oh, look at all the people who've also felt nervous. Wow, we're really connected here. Thank you for sharing. That's a way to move forward in a real-time practice that gives people skill, but also provides a space for kids to recognize, oh, it's safe to connect our feeling, even if the context that brought about that emotion information is different.
Well, in this episode, we are talking a lot about Deanna Simmons' work on how SEL skills can quickly become white supremacy with a hug. And I know that you and Deanna are friends. I'm just wondering if you can discuss this, and especially how, as a counselor and SEL practitioner, you hold these ideas of like anti-bias, anti-racism, and culturally responsive SEL skills.
Yeah, I think Dina's work in this regard is super important because I think it highlights something that happens in, again, institutions that don't build in time to do any kind of reflective practice around their own culture and therefore aren't even aware of the bias. Is that I think what Dina was talking about the most, and I've seen it, is when a program loses focus on what the goal is, right? The goal of social emotional learning is to provide people skill sets for being able to interact with their emotion information experience, right? And a skill set and a framework to be able to interact with others. It's not, many evidence-based programs are are guilty of this. They will sell their curriculums because they need to sell them. They'll sell them based on this. It'll lower your referrals. And anytime it's being sold at that, obviously it's going to be sold, right? An administrator or a district or whatever sees that and be like, we got the golden whatever. But the reality is that if it's done well, it doesn't necessarily reduce anything. It does provide students access to language and access to skill set to be familiar with in a different way their desire for expression. For the folks inside, it is small steps that you got to take fast. You got to take faster. Like, we can't do this like generational change. Like, yeah, it'll be better when these kids are, so it can feel painstakingly slow, but really, if you just are just constantly like going after those little things, they will start to add up faster.
Brian, thank you so much for being here with us today. We really appreciated having you here.
Thank you all. It's super fun to be able to talk about these things. And I think they're just super important for our whole society to be able to heal and to start to move forward in a way that's inclusive and real, rather than kind of imagined and hoped for. So thank you all so much.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, thank you. Let's see some high-quality programs in action. It's time for 2-minute tips. 2-minute tips are quick, simple, research-based strategies for ELO and ECE professionals.
Today, we're going to review one of our 2-minute tips called self-regulation. So this week's 2-minute tip topic is self-regulation. Again, along with all of our 2-minute tips, there is a little paragraph explaining the research behind this practice. There are easy to implement program suggestions here as well, along with examples. And we can hop over here to watch a participant at launch at Maple Elementary lead a self-regulation activity. So this is a great example of youth leadership, youth voice, and offering self-regulation skills at a program. You'll hear the young person reference 4 colors on the mood meter. So this program kind of like quadruple dips, and we get an emotion naming activity in here as well. So let's go ahead and watch.
Well, I think it's very important to just have your own time period to think, to reflect, you know. I mean, there's a lot of things that happen throughout the day, and sometimes it's good to reflect there and then, and they don't often get that opportunity. So, like I said earlier, when they come into our program and they need to transition into it, that's, you know, probably why. It's because, you know, they need some space, some time to really have their mind just settle down, and they might not even know it. Their bodies might not even know it, but when you give them that time and that space to just calm down, they, you know, things might happen. You know, they might think of things. They might, you know, things might clear up in their head. You know, they might find some clarity in something that they didn't think about earlier, but they have this little short time to think about the entire day or what they want to do.
So does anybody want to lead mindful minute?
Not me.
I think I might join in just because I might need some mindful minute too.
Close your eyes if you want to. Breathe in through your mouth and out. No, breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. Now think about your day. Think about if you're in the red, blue, yellow, or green. If you're in the red or blue, think about if tomorrow you can change that. And if you're in the yellow or green, go to your dream world. Now try to empty your mind. Think about nothing. Just relax your body.
How does everyone feel right now? I feel pretty calm. Thanks, Scott.
We all know as adults that you know, when you have that quiet moment, you know, things just start, you know, popping in your head, and you don't even know it. Like, you just, you know, something inside you that's bothering you, and you don't even know will come out. And I think it's important that these kids have that time, you know, to identify like what's going on inside them, you know, and they might not have that.
Now it's time for Try It Out. Our first Try It Out activity is called the I Am From poem. This is a Mad Lib style fill-in-the-blank poem that we have available for free on our website at Cultivate Learning and in this episode's issue of Circle Time magazine. We have two versions of this activity to accommodate different reading and writing abilities and communication preferences. One option is a full-page writing-only poem. The second is a shorter writing portion with half the page left for the poet to draw an image about the poem.
You can invite children to share parts of or all of their poem. These can also be displayed around the classroom. Writing about yourself and having an opportunity to hear others and see others' work about themselves helps build both social and self-awareness. Remember our discussion from episode 1 about modeling appropriate vulnerability alongside children. So if you're going to ask kiddos to share their poems, definitely make sure that you join in with them and make your own and share it as well.
Another great activity for supporting SEL skills is a group game called Emotion Charades. We have a lesson plan for this included in the magazine. So using index cards, you would write out a collection of emotion words, or as many different emotion words as you can, with one word on each card. Help children build emotion vocabulary by using complex feeling words like overjoyed or disappointed, alongside basic feeling words like happy or sad. You can consider including a small picture of a person demonstrating the emotion to support children who are still learning how to read or might not know the emotion word well. And you can also think about adding words in different languages, so you can support multilingual young people in your space. Then you would have children take turns selecting an emotion card at random and acting out the emotion while everyone else guesses.
Another really fun game to play that's sort of similar to this, or you could borrow the props from, is called the What Would You Do acting game. This can help children build important skills like empathy, emotion awareness, and friendship skills. So in this game, children can write down or dictate to somebody who can write a short high emotion or problem friendship situation. You can have the kids break up into small groups and take turns performing their scenes. At the end of the scene, discuss as a large group. What would you do? How would you feel? And how could you help? Let the children in your group decide how they would like to respond and then act out the resolution together.
Yeah, and this acting game can be enhanced by providing different props, which can just add some more fun and pizzazz to the activity. You can also use emotion word speech bubbles or costume materials. Providing journals for children to write scenarios and resolutions can also support their learning too.
Our last activity is a homemade stress ball. Making stress balls is a fun and appropriate activity for everybody from preschool through adulthood. Stress balls are a great thing to have either at your program if you have kind of a self-regulation or calm down corner. Providing fidget toys and stress balls there is a great resource. You can also send children home with the stress balls. So let's see Gabby and Sadalise make their own stress balls in Let's Make It. All right, here at Circle Time, we love to talk about books. Cozy areas and book corners are easily stepped up for use by school-age children by simply offering books at an appropriate reading level. In this season, we are going to feature 2 different types of books. The first is a read aloud book appropriate for all kids up to probably about 2nd or 3rd grade, but really anyone can enjoy these stories. And then the second book that we'll offer and talk about is a chapter book for older students that are more comfortable with about a middle reader level chapter book. I am so excited to have Sadalise back and then also to welcome Avery for joining us for book club. So hi Sadalise, hi Avery.
Hi.
Thank you both so much for being here with us, and I am so excited to hear your thoughts about these books, and also for you to share your book club reflection questions with everyone. All right, so our first book is a read aloud book that is appropriate for kiddos, preschool all the way up through 2nd or 3rd grade, but everyone can definitely enjoy this book. It is called I Am Peace by Susan Verde. So Sadalise, do you want to start us off? What did you think of this book?
I thought this book was super great. It was a really nice illustration, and how the illustration kind of tied in with the text.
Yeah.
And how in one part of the book, he's sitting down and he gives this little pouch to a bird that flies off. And I thought that was super nice. Because in the text, they were talking about how he would send his hope off to somebody else that might need it. And I thought that was very nice how they did that in the illustration and in the text to kind of give people a deeper meaning.
I agree. And I kind of thought the book was a little fluid. And I know that sounds weird, how can a book be fluid? But it just, the words coincide with the pictures so well. It's just like fluid. That was the best word I could come up with. And they're very beautiful words and beautiful pictures, and it just makes you that much more peaceful just by reading it. It's also a great introduction into mindfulness for young children or grown-ups, and it's a great book.
I agree. I think there is something really magical about the illustrations in this book that does really help you sort of feel calm. It's quite soothing to read and listen to and see the artwork. And Avery, like you said, this is a great introduction to mindfulness for really anyone of any age. So this is a fun book to read across the age spectrum. And in the magazine, there is also a great breathing bracelet activity that the author wrote as well. So Avery, do you want to start us off? What is your book club reflection question for this book?
I wanted to ask people, what makes you feel peaceful? Like, do you do anything special, or is it just like taking deep breaths? What makes you feel peaceful?
Great. Well, that's a great reflection question for this book. Our second book that we're featuring this episode is a graphic novel called El Depo by Ceci Ball. This is a great book for middle school students and elementary school students. I know you have both read and really loved this book. So Sadalise, do you want to start us off with what did you think of this book?
So I've had this book for a while now, and when I was a 5th grader, I probably read it. I read it a lot when I was a 5th grader, because in the book, the main part of the book, she's a 5th grader, and I just felt like I could relate with her talking about what it's like for her to be a 5th grader and feel like you're insignificant against everybody. And I thought that it was really nice how it kind of tied into that specific age group, even though she went in through different ages in the book, which helped. But I thought that it was really cool how she shared her regular experience and her superhero experience, because it made her turn into, like, on one side it was a relatable character and on the other side it was a superhero character. And I thought that it was really nice how it all tied together in the book.
I agree, and I love it so much. The story is about like friendship and overcoming challenges, both physical and social. And I love the superhero that she makes for herself. And her superpower is what other people would call like a disability, but she makes it amazing, this special thing. And then her superhero name is, she took something that was rude and she embraced it and she made it her best self. And that's something that I think we all need to see in ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with both of you that this book is a really great, super relatable example of just friendship struggles that we all go through, especially in middle school. And then is also a really encouraging book about how we can just really embrace our entire selves and sometimes find strength in the parts of us that other people say are not our strong suits. But we can embrace them fully and just appreciate ourselves for who we are too. So what are your book club reflection questions for this book? Sadalise, do you want to start us off?
Yes. So I really wanted to just focus on the superhero part for my reflection question. And I just wanted to know, what would your superhero self be? Because she, like kind of how Avery said, she turned it into this, but she turned her disability into her strength as a superhero. And so I think that asking yourself that, because if you have something that you don't really like about yourself, and if you turn that into a superpower, it'll make you feel so much stronger as a person. So what would your superhero self be?
My reflection question is kind of along those same lines. What is your hidden superpower? So what's your not strong suit that you can make your strong suit?
I love both of those questions. Well, Avery and Sadalise, thank you so much for joining us here at Book Club today. Bye.
Well, we've come to the end of our time together. We created this episode about SEL because it's important for adults to co-develop their SEL skills alongside children. We connected SEL development from early childhood through the school-age years and into middle school and high school. We also made connections between anti-bias teaching practices and high-quality SEL activity facilitation. Lastly, we identified specific activities, strategies, and skills that you can use to build SEL skills in yourself and with children.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Bye-bye.
Bye.